Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to today's Climate Lit panel, Outdoor Learning and Climate Literacy for Young Children in Public Schools. We're so glad you could join us today and so thankful for our panelists for being here. So I'm Anna Jennerjohn. I am a teacher educator and researcher focusing on early literacy and place-based education out of St. Paul, Minnesota on Dakota land. Today, we will discuss the ways that children might become more climate literate. For example, they need creative stories to help them imagine a more ecological civilization, factual information to understand the climate crisis, and also time outdoors to allow them to connect with the natural world. Humans will not protect what they do not know and love. However, time in nature has been decreasing for children in North America over the past 50 years, and I suspect that's similar in many other places. For example, last year, children spent, on average, 4 to 7 minutes outside in unstructured play each day, and over 7 hours in front of a screen. This extinction of experience is detrimental both to children and to global climate health. As Dr. Helen Bilton says, to care for the world, you need to love it. To love it, you need to be a part of it. To be a part of it, you need to spend lots of time out in it. In this way, you can appreciate the world's power and fragility. Children must be allowed to learn in the outdoor environment. And I'll put Dr. Bilton's bio on the chat here in a few minutes once we get rolling. So thankfully, one possible place of nature connection for children is at school. What an opportunity for equity of access when we consider who has access to public schools and the hours of the day that children spend in the school environment. Some inspiring public school educators are finding ways to incorporate nature-based education into their regular school rhythms. On the panel today are teachers from across the North American continent. And we have 3 of them with us and 2 more might be able to hop on. We'll see here in a few minutes. So in the top center, we have Maria Villavicencio. Maria is a public school teacher who learns to use Mother Nature as a co-teacher through a curiosity project at her school. Along with a growing team of nature lovers, she enjoys exploring nature with her first graders on Wilderness Wednesdays and continues to expand her campus's outdoor learning spaces and program. Thanks for coming, Maria. Peter Dargett, top left, is a public school kindergarten teacher who created a play-based, nature-infused program to provide his children a more developmentally appropriate whole child experience. His first book, Teaching Off Trail, was released this past November, and it details his education evolution through the implementation of his 4 Ps philosophy. And it looks like he has a little buddy in his classroom too. So welcome, Peter. Lynn Marshall, top right, teaches various subjects in the K-3 classes at her school in Ontario, Canada, the Muskoka region. She regularly brings students outdoors and places an emphasis on appreciating and respecting nature, as well as having students develop an awareness of the benefits of being outdoors, including improved mental health, which we know is of even greater importance after the past 2 years of the pandemic. And we have 2 more teaching team from Georgia who might be able still to hop on with us, Charity and Rebecca. So the bottom left, I'm going to introduce them. Charity is the bottom left, a forest kindergarten teacher in a public school in Lafayette, Georgia. This is where students spend 2 hours each day in the forest exploring, creating, and discovering in nature's classroom. And last but not least, Rebecca Cantrell is her teaching partner, bottom right. She teaches forest kindergarten, also in Lafayette, Georgia. And she spends up to 2 hours in the forest with her students in the same location on a daily basis. They take ownership and learn to protect the natural world. Rebecca spends forest time teaching about habitats, ecosystems, plant and animal identification, along with empathy for one another. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And as we get started with the panel today, I will ask these educators questions and they will share their knowledge. Please feel free to put questions, attendees, in the Q&A. And at that time, we'll try and answer them as we go along, if possible. And if we're moving on to the next question, we will work to answer all of your questions that we haven't yet gotten to at the end. So please, I invite you to put questions in the Q&A as they come to your mind. And we'll get started here with our first question. And that is to briefly describe the type of nature-based learning that you use at your school. Maria, will you start us off with this one?
Sure. So it all started a few years ago. Another teacher in the same district who taught kindergarten started the Wilderness Wednesday program in her school. And she kept telling me, Maria, just take the kids outside, take the kids outside, you'll see. And I always had the fear of not having control, right? So then I was like, that was my biggest fear. Well, once we go out there, I have no control. And so she's like, just go outside for read aloud. So we started very small, just taking the kids out for read aloud. And it was just amazing how kids were making connections. As I'm reading, they're like, well, there it is. There's a bee. Let's follow that bee. So we were, then I took it into the science program. So whatever curriculum we are doing in our school, the kids will say, let's take it outside. Let's go. Right now we're for math. We're doing graphing. All they want to do is go outside to the bird feeders and tally mark what they see, what they don't see, graph it. So they are often asking to go outside and go into nature and put that into our curriculum. So I hardly have to plan anything extra. They will take me outside. And I'm using the curriculum that we do in our school. Any books this week, we were reading the Ocean Animals or Oceans of Animals. And we just got back from spring break, and a lot of students had lots of connections and they had concerns because they had seen a lot of trash on the beach. And now they started bringing those concerns into our morning meeting. And next thing I know, that's what we spent doing today, picking up trash out in our backyard, because it started with a book and it started with talking and the concerns about our nature.
Thank you, Maria. Lynn or Peter, feel free to hop in. I'd love to hear from both of you.
You can go ahead, Peter.
Oh, we're just so polite. Ladies first.
So I think at our school, we're lucky that we're in a school where I'm not the only educator that brings the kids outside. So we have a group, everyone in our school brings students outside. As a matter of fact, we have some special needs students that go outside on a regular basis to start their day with a trail walk, which has been helping their day. So we have lots of property here, almost 100 acres. During the COVID time, the teachers went out and set tarps so they could work under. I personally use a sugar shack as my home base most of the time. We make sure that we allow time for free exploration, but also have targeted lessons outside. And again, just like Maria, we start small, you get to know your learners. It was a while before we'd been together because of all of our COVID. And then we just expanded as we went. So now I feel free. I take one kindergarten class outside with no support. They know my markers. If I tell them to stop at the bumpy tree or Mr. Rocky, they know that that's where they stop and wait. And we've most recently done tapping of the maple sugar trees. So we did a lot of math through that. We've did lessons on how to identify trees. Our students think it's really fun to stick a camera in a tree to see what the inside looks like and look for any signs of animals. That's basically sums up where we're at.
Excellent. And I would kind of piggyback on what the two wonderful ladies said about starting small. That's a huge element especially for someone who maybe doesn't have the passion or knowledge base about going outside, that starting small and really letting Mother Nature help guide you. It does wonders. And Basically, outdoor learning is all about, instead of taking the child and trying to fit them into the curriculum, it's really taking the curriculum that you are responsible for and letting Mother Nature help you guide that curriculum around the child's interests and abilities. So starting small is a wonderful thing to do. I started my program, a nature kindergarten program, about 7 years ago because I saw a need for a change in myself. My classroom is doing wonderfully in a kindergarten of what is now kindergarten. So I had a lot of the play-based things were basically gathering dust in my closet, and I was really focused on academics, and my kids are doing wonderful. And every year, more and more higher expectations were asked to be accomplished, and teachers, of course, wanting to feel like they're doing what they're needed to do, reached those goals and exceeded those goals. But there came to a point where there was clearly something missing. And I came to this realization when I saw some of my highest academic achievers kind of falter during the end of the year when I did bring out those gathering dust toys. And I saw the spark of those kids that were maybe hidden and quiet and timid really come alive when it was more unstructured and play-based. So I spent time researching that and eventually was able to create a trail and outdoor classroom spaces in this beautiful parcel of land, not quite 100 acres, but a nice chunk of land behind our school that we continue to add and develop each day, but we go out regardless of the weather. Like I said, the kids go out there every day, depending on where we are, depending on times of the year. They get that familiarity and build that relationship with themselves, with me, and with the land. And we all work together to create a really wonderful time of year. And I guess if spring here in Wisconsin ever officially starts, that's where we really become more of that nature-based, because we do basically go outside from the time the buses drop off to the time the buses arrive for pickup. So it's a really exciting time in spring, if it ever starts here in Wisconsin.
Thank you all. And it's cool to hear about the different ways that you're finding to incorporate nature-based ed. Maria has a strong Wilderness Wednesdays program, right, Maria? So it's like Wednesday is that core day that you know you're going to spend a chunk of time outside. Lynn is what we in the States would call like a specialist teacher, right, Lynn? So you are teaching like many different subjects outside with different classes of students, and you find really creative ways to take them outside for many different subject areas. And Peter is taking his kids outside daily, right? So you work to incorporate it daily. So like, I think it's helpful to see different models, like different ways that teachers are finding that they can create a rhythm to take their students out. So when you each started sort of this transformation, maybe that's less true for you, Lynn, but when you started taking kids outside and that kind of like cusp of change of practice, what were some of the barriers to nature-based learning as a teacher? And then how did you overcome them? Because I think it helps us as educators or people who are in support of this type of learning think about how you overcame the barriers that presented themselves to you.
I think the biggest barrier for me was me, because I did not know how amazing it could have been. Like, and I was always fearful of what is going to happen. What if a kid falls? What if somebody gets stung? What if, all of those fears that I carried with me. Once I started taking kids outside and spreading the word, so I've been in the district for 22 years, but this is my 6th year in this school, and I had only been here for 2 years. I did not know that back in the day, there was already an outdoor classroom not far from the back door. I did not know that any of that existed right in our woods. So the more that I started asking, then and just learning that existed before the testing came along and the programs were cut, then we started with a couple of people who already were retired and used to do that. Then I did a little bit of research and we started revamping those areas that already existed and looking for a curriculum that they already used, and then realized that, again, anything that we do, like Peter said, could be tied, like the curriculum is just a co-teacher. And the book, they can make connections to any book or to math or science when we are outside. So it was, the biggest barrier was me and my fears, because once I decided to take them outside, things just became easier. The parents were very willing to let they saw the need. So parents were willing to donate items, making connections to other people, to other organizations like the Watershed District. They come out and they do free lessons for my kids and for anybody who goes out there. The Jeffers Foundation here in Minnesota also provided journals for all of the kids, and for 21 teachers, they've provided us with the lesson plans and training of what to do in the woods. They took us out into the woods and taught us things that we could do with our classes out in the woods. So just learning what is already available to us. And again, my biggest fear was me, and like doing that, the work, which wasn't really hard. Once I started, then things started just showing up, and I was like, oh, I can do that. And training, oh, I can do that. So I would say I was the biggest.
I would agree in that the biggest barrier, at least starting off, was me, and not necessarily because of any fears or hesitation. I felt I would be comfortable in that environment, but more so because of my stubbornness and my inability to be flexible at the beginning. I wanted control, and I kind of had, as a teacher, my plan scheduled for, all right, this is what we're going to do today. And today we're going to learn about mushrooms, and we're going to go find mushrooms, and it's going to be great. I've got this book, I've got this activity, I've got this art project that's all going to be mushrooms. And then you take 5 steps outside and the kid finds a caterpillar, and mushrooms no longer mean anything. And I, at the beginning, would redirect like, oh, well, let that be. We got to go find mushrooms. And, really, instead of, letting the kids and their experiences guided, I just had that control of, today we're doing this lesson, and right now I'm basically just changing the setting of the lesson, and we're still going to do what I would have done inside, just in outdoors. And I had to give that away and, just kind of give that up and realize that, what, it's not going to go exactly the way that I expect in my mind, nor should it, because this is for the kids, and they're going to be the best directors of what interests them. And me sitting back, observing, watching, analyzing, documenting, now I can really see, okay, what makes them tick? What can I do to help create that excitement about what they're seeing in our outdoor classroom? How can I replicate that with maybe things they might not necessarily find as exciting in our more indoor traditional classroom? So really, I was also my biggest enemy, but like I said, because at the beginning, I just really wanted to stick to what I had planned and didn't give kids the opportunities to really guide their own learning.
And I'd say for me, I was concerned because we had some 3-year-olds who had never been in school in a daycare setting. We came off COVID. So to me, it was a little intimidating taking them out at first, especially without support with some of the classes and with support with others. And you combine some special needs students in there who have really, during that time, had not been outside. So we did kind of a staggered timing where we increased the time throughout the first couple of weeks, which seemed to help, and just setting the boundaries pretty specific. These are our meeting spots, these are our expectations, seemed to really help. I carry my little whistle, and they know 1 whistle means stop and listen, and 2 means come back to me. They really like to follow through with that one. So, and just the appropriate clothing, but we had some parents donate some clothing items to us. I on purpose wear blue pants with my colorful jacket, so those kids that don't have are not feeling out of place. And just kind of getting all the parents on board and saying, yes, your children might get messy, but here's some of the learning that they're taking away from it.
Thank you. And thank you for addressing this question in the chat too, Lynn. I'm going to throw it out to the group as well. This is from Maggie. Hi, Maggie. She's in one of my classes. She's a pre-service teacher. How can you create time and space for students to explore nature if your school does not have a large outdoor space? Any insights there from you all?
I think the concept of nearby nature is becoming more and more prevalent, where lots of times one of the caveats that people think they can't go outside is because there's not a lot nearby. And really, it is nice to be able to have access to a more wild space. Obviously that provides more opportunities, but it certainly doesn't, well, yes, hello. And it certainly doesn't need to be the only thing that you have. If you have a tree, that's a place to start. It doesn't have to be something big, but you can also bring nature inside through the use of technology, through the use of creating a nature center in your classroom where kids can kind of, from their own experiences, their own yards, bring in things like that and kind of build a little museum. But also being able to look at collaboration possibilities. I have a local nature center that I knew that when my program, if it was to be positively looked at by the community, by parents, that there might be some positive pressure on other classrooms to follow suit. And other teachers might not have that passion and interest to do what I'm doing. But if a nature center can come visit our site and lead the presentations, if we can go to that nature center, then not only do they don't have to have that interest in necessarily knowledge, they can look at the professionals and the experts and also maybe take a little tidbit of that back to the regular classroom. So is it nice to have that area to go to that's accessible? Of course, but is that necessary and required to go outside and explore? No, kids can find nature and nature will be found wherever you go.
I was also thinking, like, I don't know which area you're in or anything, but setting up bird feeders and planter boxes outdoors might be a nice way, creating some little butterfly habitats, some butterfly feeders might also help. It's just another way to connect. I know I mentioned doing an indoor center where you have maybe a quiet area with some plants and stuff as well. I know one of our teachers has an indoor growing station where she has the lights and she's starting all of her plants indoors, which creates a little green space for the kids, and it teaches them about caring. She's taken it all inside the classroom and done composting based on it. They've done science activities around it. They've tried experimenting with how to grow things in the best way. So just a few more examples.
And agreeing with both the other teachers, the sidewalk is a great board. We take chalk into the sidewalk, and we do in front of the school or even in the playground and the blacktops math problems. And when we use nature manipulatives for math instead of using the blocks, and here we use rocks, we use wood chips, we use leaves in the fall. So to doing the addition, the subtraction, anything that we could possibly do in math, we use nature as manipulatives for those. We do have now bird feeders that we go and observe. We have they're working right now in a butterfly sanctuary. We did order caterpillars, so we're going to be doing those inside the classroom and releasing them outside. We have a couple of teachers that have sensory boxes that have nature in them. So then students could have those even for a calming corner, just having sand or having rocks and pebbles, or just to sort things out in the classroom if it's not available right on the outdoors, right at your door. Also, American Owls program, the American Wilderness Leadership School. I was able to join them for a summer, and they provided our classroom with a whole box of pelts and scat and skulls. So we have different associations and different groups that are willing to teach our kids, our students, about conservation and about animals. So, and if not sending them to you, they're definitely willing to have online lessons or Skype with them from the Yellowstone parks and all the other different parks that because of COVID, many of them couldn't go into classrooms, but now they have the tools to be able to Skype through. So especially on winter days where we can't really safely go outside, we tap into those.
Thank you for all those awesome ideas, thinking about how to address if there's not a large outdoor classroom or many acres of outdoor space, how you can still do outdoor ed using nearby nature, and all those great ideas that you all shared. Thank you for also thinking about like training and just addressing your own mindset, thinking about wanting to control a curriculum and letting it go to overcome that barrier, and also thinking about the gear for kids as well. So next, let's talk about what knowledge do you hope your students learn from their time outside, and how do you help them build it? What knowledge do you hope your students learn from their time outside, and how do you help them build it?
Well, when I think about my kids going outside, I think they're going to build a set of knowledge and skills in a variety of different ways. Like obviously, research can show you how going outside will help with the physical skills, but it's social skills, it's emotional skills. It's the whole child spectrum really can be benefited by going outside. But I think I'll focus more on, I love using place-based principles about just really digging into what's literally in your own backyard and using like the real names for the plants and the real names for the birds. And I'm not a nature expert at all. So lots of times, what is that plant? We'll have to investigate together. But learning about those things that those kids can make connections with and then bring back to their families and learn and teach their families in their own backyard, in their own parks that they go to. We just started doing birding, and so the kids are starting to identify the birds that are slowly coming back. And we're about to start our very wonderful activity of the garlic mustard Polathon, where we learn about the invasive garlic mustard species, which is a really easy plant for kids to identify and very easy and fun for them to actually pick and pull and eradicate. And we have a contest here that's promoted by an invasive species consortium, where they pick and pull and we weigh and we measure and we do all those things and we kind of compete against other areas. And it's always this time of year where we do it in our classroom and we do it in our outdoor yard, but we've been doing it now for so many years that we're doing really good work and there's not as much to find. So every year it gets more onto, okay, you've got to do this in your backyard. And you get so many emails from kids and families who say, oh, we spent the weekend, we spent 2 hours pulling in our backyard, or we were driving down the road and my kid couldn't stop identifying the places that had the plants and saw a bird and all those things. So any way that I can want to get those kids that find that knowledge that then sticks with them and is more memorable and meaningful and things that they can connect with and know that what they're doing has an impact not only on themselves and their learning, but the community in general. That's always something I want the kids to live with. That goes well beyond any math problem or word we're going to study. It's okay, what memories and what can you do to help make the world a better place because of the experiences you have here? How can you move that forward when you go beyond the school walls?
I'll add to that. I agree with Peter. And also my focus now is making sure that all of my students get the opportunity to experience the outdoors, to experience the woods, to get an opportunity to go sledding. Not all of my students have gotten opportunities like that, or to use tools. Right now they're into picking up garbage. So I made sure that we have the buckets and that we have the grabbers and teach them how to safely do that, so that because they're into that. And we get the emails from the parents saying, oh my goodness, all weekend long we went to the park and that's all they wanted to do was pick up the garbage. So whatever they're into, and it's different every year. Last year we were into birds. Last year, kindergarten and first grade were in person all year long. So we were here all year. And so we got to build bird feeders outside because we were the only ones in the building. We got to do a lot of work in our path and our woods because of COVID, we were like going outside more. So it wasn't just Wilderness Wednesday. We ended up going more outside because it was safer for all. So just whatever they were into or whatever they are into, that's what guides my teaching. So it's just, okay, that's what we're into. And even during recess, that's what we're doing now. And the books in the classroom, whatever they're reading, and also whatever they were into sharks 2 years ago. A lot of books on sharks and fish and ocean came into the classroom. So they guide my classroom environment every year, depending on what it is that they're into.
I'd say for me, I'm focused a lot on problem solving and collaboration, as well as trying to connect to the curriculum. And I think it's important that they have an understanding that a tree is more than a tree. It's a home to nature. It provides us with things we provide. It's more of the meaningful part of everything to do with our surroundings and how that connects them to the past. So we do a lot of Indigenous studies and how important it is for the future, as well as helping students connect with one another. I mean, even in kindergarten, some of the problem solving skills I've seen improve over the course of the year, the vocabulary that they've come up with, it's been amazing for me to see. And even in grade 3, all of our mapping skills, all of our early Canada skills we've taught through the outdoors. So instead of having them draw a map, we went and used the snow and nature items to create maps. I think it's just more seeing past it's a tree and seeing what other possibilities there are. At recess time today, I had a student who was excited because she found a V-shaped branch and realized it could be like a math compass. So she was teaching others how to draw circles. I had some kids doing their ta-ta-ti-ti-tas in the sand with sticks. Another boy was making compasses and writing the cardinal directions, which we've been practicing in the outdoors. So I think that takes it more away from just this is a class opportunity to, because we're connecting with the nature, now it's an everywhere opportunity.
So I'm hearing, as far as what knowledge you hope that students learn from their time outside and how you help them build it, you hope you learn what is around them, like learn to identify those creatures and those plants that are immediately available to them. And then also thinking about experiencing the outdoors, because that school might be a great place for them to do that and experience the tools that they could use when they're moving into action. So we heard about moving students to action as far as pulling garlic on the school grounds and also in their homes, moving to action by gathering trash, and they're again bringing that to their weekends as well. And then thinking about meaningful connections to their surroundings, connecting both to the past of that place and also to the future of that place. Thank you, that's giving me a lot to think about. Let's take this question from the Q&A from Kathy Jordan, who's with the Children in Nature Network. Can you talk about the value of appropriate risk and how to present those opportunities? Anyone ready for that one?
I guess I should jump in. I don't like jumping in first, but so I think that, again, we start small, we go to a smaller area, and I'm talking in terms of kindergarten to grade 3. So more the kindergarten grade 1s, we start in a smaller area where I knew the surroundings, and there were logs down. There were things that were provide some risk, but not as much as just being out in the open in nature. So I think we talked about my 3 rules in gym are always be safe, be kind, and have fun. So we connected to the be safe part. And we were very mindful about what would you need to think about if Mrs. Marshall said you can walk across this log, where are some of your things you need to think about? Is it possible to fall down? Okay, so how can we prevent you from being hurt badly? Can we use our hands in front of us? And just the small steps. And then we did it through our nature walks. And right now, like, I feel very comfortable saying to my classes, okay, free exploration time. Be careful, but where are things we have to think about? So in the wintertime, it looked a little different than it did in the summertime. In the wintertime, we talked more about the slippery rocks, how we could manage them and not be hurt, how it's important to be with a friend, how we should avoid the deep water in certain areas. I think it's really beneficial to not like overreact to every small little injury too. Like if I fall down and bump my knee, it's okay, you will be fine. Like just do your deep breathing, that will help you out. Now, do we need a Band-Aid or not? And I went from kids wanting Band-Aids 5 times in a class to maybe having someone ask for a Band-Aid of all of my 6 classes once in the last 2 months. So I think just building that stamina and that reality that it's okay, I'm okay, I'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think that sometimes we underestimate kids and their ability to assess their own risk, and we just try to bubble wrap them and take care of them and not necessarily give them the opportunity to fall. A child that doesn't learn how to fall will eventually fall and not be able to protect themselves. So they have to have those moments. So you can't go in there saying that, yes, we will be 100% without injury. There will be mud, there will be blood, there could be crud. Those are things that are just part of the outdoor experience, but really trusting your kids and providing them the opportunities to learn about risk. For example, it's tick season. And so ticks can be something that could be very scary, more so for the parents and families than the actual children. But we just begin at the beginning of the year, we bring ticks into normal everyday discussions. We normalize it so that it's not a big deal. I take my dice and I draw little legs on them so they're not rolling with dice, they're counting the ticks. And we learn about ticks. We talk about what they are. And when spring comes, the kids actually I don't want to say they're excited, but it's kind of a rite of passage to get a tick. My boys especially will roll around into tall grass where they know the ticks like to be, and they almost get disappointed when they're not ticked. So it's kind of a rite of passage. Sorry, my child is yelling in the background, but yeah, so ticks and sticks are kind of those things that can be dangerous or kind of scary at first. But if you work with kids, you teach kids, and you give them the opportunities, it's a wonderful thing. And obviously also as an adult, understanding and differentiating the difference between a risk and a hazard. Obviously risks are things that are healthy for kids to experience. Hazards are things that we want to avoid at all costs because those are out of potential danger for our children.
Those were some of my fears when I first started taking kids outside. And then, so the more that I learned about our space back there, and kids, you take them outside, you can't control them. You can't control nature. You can't control kids in nature. So then they're going to want to see those sticks, and they're going to want to climb up those trees. They're going to want to try those. They're going to grab those sticks and start smacking other things or digging in the dirt. They are going to do that. So I had to let go of my fears and stop telling them not to, because they were learning, I was learning. And now I have, knock on wood, never had an incident outside, and we've done this now year 5, where we have had any injuries or anything like that outside. We do have trees that sometimes have fallen, so the kids love to climb those trees and even do play horsey on those. There are fun days. I do have, the watershed district has provided through grants, rain boots for all my kids. So there are days when it's really muddy by our pond that we purposefully dress for the mud. Parents get an email, or not an email, a whole booklet of what to expect on Wilderness Wednesday. My kids have extra clothes. They know that on any day, if we go outside, whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, whether it's pouring, unless it's dangerous, then we won't go outside. But they are prepared and they're ready. When we go out and play in the mud, they come back muddy, and the parents know, and they know when, right now they're super excited because it might rain. We're going to go play in the puddles. We're going to discover the puddles. And even during recess, I'll come back. Well, the rain boots are out. They can get the rain boots, and we start going into the pond and getting stuck in the mud. And sometimes I am at arm's length, and they're like, I'm stuck. And I'm like, now what? Now what are you going to do? So they start helping each other with sticks, trying to pull each other out, and they're no danger whatsoever, but they will end up having to roll out of that mud to be able to be safe, and maybe even grab the boot that got stuck or the sock that got stuck. And those are some of the most meaningful learning experiences for them. They will write stories about the day they got stuck in the mud. They will tell stories for the rest of the year. So those are the times that I'm like, they're going to get dirty, they're going to get dirty, and parents know. So they've been pre-warned, and the kids look forward to those days.
Thanks for answering those questions. That's a particular interest of mine, as children storying after these adventures outside, because it seems like they've got a lot to say right after an adventure like that. And what a great thing to write about when you're learning how to read and to write. So I'm going to move us to our next planned question here, and then we have a few more in the Q&A and one that I noticed from the chat. So we'll hopefully get to those as well. But hang tight for a minute. I think this is actually going to answer something in the Q&A as well. Okay, can you all see the screen? Okay, so thinking about a specific environmental education activity that you did to help kids build climate literacy. So tell us about a specific thing that you did to help kids build climate literacy. So we've talked about like nature connection, this time outside, building this connection and this love and this maybe ease in nature. But now we're going to talk about more targeted ways that you use an educational activity to build climate literacy. So we're going to start here. These are your pictures, right, Maria? Okay.
Again, this came from first graders' ideas because we were doing experiments with, or we were doing a wondering project with pumpkins. So pumpkins were just appearing, different kinds of pumpkins, different colors and different sizes. And we were just wondering all about pumpkins. And then we had the questions, do they float? Do they sink? And did experiments. So one day at lunch, they started wondering, what if we bury these outside? Will we get new pumpkins because of the seeds? And other kids they wanted to bury everything. Right. So we ended up opening up. So all 5 first grades, we each opened up a pumpkin and we filled it with our trash from lunch. Every student got to put at least one item inside the pumpkin, and we buried them in our, we have a new garden that will be our butterfly sanctuary. But so we ended up burying our pumpkins in that area, and that was in September. So the plan is on Earth Day, we are going to dig them back up and see what's left. So I don't know what's going to be left. They don't know what's going to be left. They've been making predictions throughout the year as we learn what we put in there. They've been learning about compost. They've been learning about plastic. They've been learning about all of these things and how they affect our environment. So it'll be super interesting to see what's left. Every time we go to the bird feeders, they're peeking in, and they've noticed that critters have been digging into our pumpkins. So that has been pretty interesting. They're like, something is eating our pumpkins. And I'm like, okay. So I wonder what's going to be left. So yeah, Earth Day, we will find out what's left.
Okay, so thinking about decomposition, the things that we eat and use to package our food, like how long do these things last? Where do they go? What is left after they're buried for a certain amount of time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Peter, I believe this one is yours.
See some of my children. Yes. That, of course, is what I mentioned earlier. Those kids are holding little plants of little sapling, I guess, of garlic mustard. And that all connects to me in the whole theme of wants and needs. We spend a lot of time talking about wants and needs and learn about what they are for people, but we also connect it to what they are for the plants and the animals that live in our own backyard. And through a variety of different activities throughout the year, we learn about the interconnectivity of the different plants and animals and how they all need each other and how we as people need those things as well. And when we talk about garlic mustard, more specifically, we talk about how sometimes humans do things to the earth that aren't necessarily helpful, even though they weren't meant to be. A couple minutes, son. Go play. Yes. She wants some marshmallows. That's a huge interruption. You got to have your marshmallows.
We welcome her voice, Peter. Go on.
No, we talk about how, well, what do humans do to impact the earth, and what are things that we do? And we talk about, they can be gardens to get fruit. They unfortunately throw garbage away, and pollution and landfills and those things. And then we talk about, well, what are some things that we do that might more directly impact nature? And we learned about garlic mustard, and we learned that it was brought years ago from Europe because it was a very tasty treat. But as we learned about it, we learned that, well, it grows really well in our environment. It leaves behind some very bad consequences. It doesn't let anything. Oakley, take a break, please. We talk about how it can not only lead to destroying and not allowing space for our native plants, which then our native animals lead, but how it also leaves some chemicals in the soil that doesn't allow things to grow even after you pull it for some time. So it's kind of we're talking a little bit of chemistry, which in kindergarten is kind of fun, but we talk about how all these things that people do, what are some things that they do to impact the earth, both the negative things that they do and both the positive things we do, and what can we do moving forward to make sure that the decisions we make in our classroom, in our community, at our homes can really benefit not only ourselves, but benefit the community, the plants and animals around us. So it's really talking about this whole community-based interconnectivity about how we all need each other and depend on each other. So let's make the world a better place. I guess that's my soapbox kumbaya moment.
I'm thinking too how you're looking at how humans had an unintended consequence and then how they're working together to reverse that. Okay, Lynn.
Again, I was kind of like Peter, doing a little bit of wants versus needs, and I was incorporating some social studies with my grade 2-3 class. So we were outside, they had to forage for their food. I had pre-hid some items that were pretend food items that they had to find in this one. But then I realized how important it might be to do this again with the younger classes. So instead of staying with just the grade 2-3 class, in which case in our 2-3 class, I had, we have this role play we do. So because it was early Canada, we had some as the pioneers and early Europeans and some as Indigenous groups. And just to compare how they went and found their food, what tools they both had, but the importance with both groups of not taking more than you need, not wrecking nature items to get your success. So they were never allowed to take a branch off of a living tree. They had to find branches that were on the ground. So there was a lot of training around, are we hurting something if we're not looking for things that are no longer a part of a plant? So let's look for our sticks. How does that help? So we had a lot of conversation around how is it helpful if we're looking for things that are on the ground, like should we be pulling acorns or pine cones off the tree, or should we wait and look for them on the ground? So just kind of basing it about my students, I'll call it Mother Earth like I do. So just to hear the conversation now, even in all of the grades at recess time, you can hear students say to other students, don't hurt Mother Earth, we need to leave Mother Earth, or some of them call it Mother Nature. It's just really nice to see, like, what can we do to help Mother Nature? You see the kids going out now and making chipmunk homes, and I bring in the feed and we feed the chipmunks and the deer. Just kind of the real respect for where we are and what we have, and the importance of keeping it clean, not leaving any trash behind, and not damaging what we have. This all seems important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking about climate literacy, it seems like this giant topic, right? But how would you as educators, what do you think climate literacy looks like for elementary students? What do they need to know?
I think that, as everyone has mentioned, is just making them aware of the impact that humans have on our earth. And every day, everything that we do has a great impact. And sometimes it just kind of gets like so daunting of how, like, where the world is headed, but there are so many people and organizations that are making a change. And just teaching kids that we're not doomed. We just need to learn and do our part.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I do remember reading articles in the past when I was starting into this, really talking about, is it really emotionally healthy to tell these kids about all the problems that are happening in our earth and how, we're destroying it, and is that really going to be beneficial? And well, to some extent, you're not being dishonest when you want to tell them the truth, but you really want to focus on, well, yes, you do have an impact, and that impact can be very positive. And every big journey starts with a small step. So yes, there are things that people have done and that just are naturally changing our earth, and sometimes in not so positive ways, but there are certain things that we can do to help the earth and to help each other. And so always putting that positive spin and learning about what are the things that we can do that help each other and help earth are certainly things that shouldn't be avoided just because there might be some discussions about, some of the things that we are doing aren't so great, but you can't change if you don't know. So it's important to really teach kids and be positive that, yes, we can make a difference. So let's work hard and let's do it.
I think around the same, like teaching kids, it's not just about them. This planet is for everyone, past generations, future generations. How are we going to support that? I was able to do, I saw it online, but I was able to make polar ice caps and bins with the kids last week, where they had to, a bin of water, make their polar ice caps, put the animal on and see how it changed throughout the day. And in kindergarten, we were able to talk about what's happening to the ice in our world and how could we protect it, and just had a really great conversation that I never expected I would be able to have with a group of kindergarten children. They actually had some great ideas, and just the visual connection, I think, really helped to support that there is a bigger piece of this. We looked up on a map where the caps and just, great details came out from their knowledge too. So getting them to actually share what they know, talk to their parents about it, and kind of open it up in that way kind of helps as well. So it starts in the classroom, ends up in the community aspect, I hope.
We have 3 questions I'm hoping to get to here in our last 8 minutes. So I think we won't get to hear it from each of you on each of them probably, but this one, Peter, you answered that one in the chat. Lynn, do you have anything to add? Because I feel like you just talked about going classroom to community. Have your teachings and learning experiences in nature also led to talks about living more environmentally friendly or more sustainably? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we do that throughout the class all the time and just outdoors, but I also share with parents and they share with us on Seaside. It's our communication device. We've kind of done a whole lot, so it was hard to pinpoint down, but even just as small as picking up garbage outdoors and how that can help, and just the whole impact that families can have on the environment, how planting things would be helpful, because what impact would they have? Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that's great. And Sheila Williams Ridge is adding here, how do you engage families in this work, which I feel like you're kind of dipping into as well. Any thoughts on that one, Maria?
Well, starting from day one, they get a flyer that talks about Wilderness Wednesday. Pre-COVID, when we had parent information night, I do have videos where I have students explaining Wilderness Wednesday and parents from the past explaining Wilderness Wednesday and what to expect. Therefore, the kids starting from week 1, they bring in a set of clothes because they know what to expect, and they're eager. Okay, when are we going to get wet? When are we going to get dirty? Because they already know what's going to happen. And parents also, sometimes they'll email me, did you know about this? There's a grant out here. There's a No Child Left Inside grant. Have you applied for this? Have you applied for that? Do you need any more bird seed? So parents are very involved as they see the kids getting excited about nature, and they just want to help, because parents and the community, and if they have any links to anything else, then they're always willing to help.
I know one local teacher here as well invites all families into the outdoor classroom once a month so they can experience that space as well. Here's a longer question. What suggestions can you offer to teachers who struggle to monitor and promote depth of engagement with all students when teaching outside? I'm finding that for students who struggle with attention, when we are practicing outdoor learning, they struggle to engage with significance or depth. They struggle to move past the, hey, look, a caterpillar, into more structured or sustained inquiry. And this person is thinking of like 4th or 5th graders. Does any of you want to tackle that, moving from surface level observation into more depth of inquiry?
Just one small suggestion I do with my grade 2-3 class who have trouble focusing is we set the task, make it clear what the task is, and when they're done, they get free exploration time. So it's kind of, it's an incentive for them to get their job done because they love the free exploration time.
Any other thoughts on that one?
I would agree. Just letting them know, even prior to going outside, letting them know what our goal is today. Today we have a goal, whether it's making snow volcanoes, whatever it is, and then you will have some time to, explore or do other things. Like Peter had mentioned before, sometimes we have our lesson plans, but then Mother Nature has other ideas. So also being a little flexible and letting go of those, and allowing, if that child is into that caterpillar, okay, so then bring that into the lesson. How can we look into that? Okay, what else can we learn about that caterpillar?
Yeah, exactly. It's taking the things that the kids find, and while it might stray from that initial plan and that initial, you want them to set that goal, but keep that little nugget in your mind. Okay, that's what's motivating to that child. That child really struggles with this attention. Well, I can use what does motivate them and offer sometimes there's some independent research and independent things where kids can kind of choose what motivates them and going from that. And that can be really motivating for kids. And the fun thing about that, it also connects to engaging those families, because besides inviting them to the classroom, which you always do, because that will answer any questions or any fears parents have, is when they see it, then they see it and they know it. But besides showing them seesaw pictures and those things, which are great communication tools, I think lots of times in a nature-based environment, you don't have to necessarily worry too much about engaging families, because if the kids are motivated and excited, they're going to pester their families at home and get them motivated. They're going to do the things that, hey, I really love doing this here. I'm going to do that as well with my family and teach them things, because I get so many responses from families that are learning things vicariously through their kids coming home and sharing the pictures that they saw or sharing the things that they created. So a great way to family engage is to, really get those kids motivated on the things that they're interested in, because they take that home. The parents see that, and that's what the parents want. They want to see engaged and happy kids. And there's no better way than letting the kids really guide the learning with Mother Nature's help.
So in our last 2 minutes today, this is going to be our last question. The local elementary school near my home is right next door to a large natural area. This was in the chat earlier. But to my knowledge, they do not use it to incorporate outdoor learning into their work. What advice do you have to those who wish to influence a school to begin to offer this? So how can we influence a school, maybe in measures of sustainability or in measures of taking kids outside? Closing thoughts from each of you.
Maybe if you connected it to the improved mental health that would support in all of the children in the school. The fact that any kids that we've seen with a lot of behavior, the more time they're outside, the more their behavior starts curbing, is very beneficial as well. And I don't know about there, but here we have all the insurance issues around it and just having to work a way through all of those pieces too. So I think it's just being open with the school about the fact that parents would like this, and this is important to the community.
Mm-hmm. And depending if it's city property, just knowing, asking the permission to see if the kids are even allowed in that area, because that was our part. Ours is city property, so we had to ask permission to see if we could go and take the kids out there for liability purposes. But it takes one teacher. So if you can get one teacher out there to give it a try, the word spreads. If my first graders went on, the second grade teachers were forced to, third and fourth, fifth, as they go, because they're like, well, there's a classroom out there and we have to. They want to. So it takes one.
Yeah, I was going to kind of follow that with the exact same thing. If that interested parent or family can, voice their interest and give that school some information, there's usually a teacher out there who's willing to, take that opportunity, take that risk. And the beauty of it is that if you get one parent and one teacher, it starts from there and it goes from there, and it can just really blossom into something beautiful. So it just takes just one little adventure, one little say yes, and you can kind of go for it. So don't shut the door on going out there. Make sure you get every opportunity, and good things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Maria, for giving your time this evening and sharing your knowledge. Thank you for giving us food for thought, thinking about how we can build climate literacy in children through taking them outdoors, through building that nature connection, through building that playful relationship, and through building that climate literacy through following their train of inquiry into things they're interested in and moving them into action, both in the school and the community. It was really great to hear about your schools and your classrooms, and thank you again, and thank you everyone for coming. Take care.
Thank you.